What if I told you that all of the information you believe to be real about Jim Jones's life was actually false? Okay, so Mama Jones is at last speaking up, and the details she is sharing are incredible. Okay, so you've been wondering why Jim's life becomes so disorganized for years. Why did the betrayal occur? Why was everything all over the place? Get ready, because Mama Jones just gave the answers. You won't believe who is to blame, I can guarantee. Did Jim's poor choices really bring him to ruin? Or were the people closest to him plotting against him in secret? Despite the fact that Chrissy Cam'ron has always caused controversy, did they really want to destroy Jim's company from within? Everything is being summarized by Jones, and her remarks are explosive. What private actions did Chrissy and Cam'ron do that resulted in Jim's public humiliation? How much of a network is there for betrayal? It's a darker reality than anyone could have imagined. A few poor choices don't matter. It's about a full-fledged plot. Get ready to hear the unspoken story. For you, Jim Jones will no longer be the same. The force with which it will strike will astound you. What you're about to hear will add to all of your preconceptions, so let's analyze this. After years of seeing the destruction, Mama Jones has now spoken out against Jim Jones and others around him. It's more than just a family drama though, I pledge. We are dealing with a treachery so deep and intricate that it is almost hard to believe. Due to his public disputes, controversial decisions, and let's not forget his undeniable influence on the rap industry. Jim has been a controversial figure for many years. What really happened, however, has always been a mystery. When Jim's life falls apart, how did someone so strong and self-assured end up in this predicament? Camron and Chrissy are the names that seem to crop up every time. You may wonder what's new, but Mama Jones is finally speaking the truth. You see, Jim's demise has been a secret for a long time. Relationship problems, professional setbacks, and public humiliation were too much to bear. Mama Jones paints a dismal picture when she makes the connections. Was Jim truly unable of going back after Chrissy and Camron had betrayed him so completely? They did, according to Mama Jones, but this conspiracy is much more terrible in its complexity. It includes control, power, and severe measures that transcend simple jealousy or miscommunication. People will visit there if they feel threatened. We need to take a moment to reflect on the times when Jim's business was thriving. Additionally, he had everything he needed for his music to fully understand the seriousness of this corporate loyalty discovery. However, his life began to fall apart after that in a manner that appeared to be almost deliberate. Mama Jones claimed to have witnessed Jim's closest friends and reliable colleagues manipulating him behind his back. According to Mama Jones's recent revelations, she is a control-obsessed person who wouldn't hesitate to manipulate and destroy in order to forward their objectives. Then there's Camron, a name that has, let's face it, always carried a lot of weight in the streets as a key figure in the rap scene. Camron built a personal empire. But according to Mama Jones, Chrissy Lynn has always been a controversial person in the public eye and has never shied away from expressing her views, especially with reference to Jim's acquaintances and co-workers. What has been reported is not the whole story. She claims that for years, Camron's motivations were never as genuine as they seemed. Jim Jones has been acting dangerously, and his ultimate goal, well, let's just say that seeing these relationships as tabloid-worthy drama wasn't his aim. But what if it surpasses that? What if the people Jim trusted the most were pushing him towards suicide? Mama Jones has stopped talking about little matters. She is revealing the truth of how Chrissy and Camron purposefully exploited Jim's situation. And believe me, it becomes even more incredible the more you learn about it. Before we go into the specifics of how they did it, let's first understand why this is so crucial. In the rap world, Jim Jones is not your usual star. It is a must-have, a recognized individual with cultural influence. And when someone close to him begins to work behind the scenes, you will undoubtedly see the height of betrayal. It was also close. He had the support of Chrissy Camron and his close friends and family, whom he trusted with everything. Jim Jones claims that Mama Jones's next revelation will fundamentally alter your perspective on these relationships. She asserted that Camron was a major factor in the romance between Jim and Chrissy. Moreover, it was more than just a drama or ego problem. Rather, he was creating uncertainty and unpredictability in the backdrop. What was the final goal he had in mind? Was he trying to undermine Jim so he could launch his own business? Or was something else happening here? What does Chrissy's role in all of this have to do with the startling discovery that Camron was genuinely setting himself up to succeed Jim? Mama Jones' theory states that Camron manipulated Chrissy because of his need for dominance and power. But power wasn't the only thing. Because she felt deceived, Chrissy was motivated to make decisions that would compromise Jim's foundation. It's obvious by now that this isn't simply a simple love triangle or friendship falling out. Rather, it's a carefully thought-out strategy that has been in existence for a long time. This betrayal's intentionality and malice begin to become apparent. Mama Jones wasn't only watching her son's life fall apart as we fit the puzzle pieces together. She was watching people Jim trusted destroy all he had worked so hard to accomplish. For what length of time will Jim remain powerless? What's more important, how big is this conspiracy? Both emotional and strategic harm were caused. Every move that Chrissy and Camron made was a part of a larger plan to gradually destroy Jim's empire. People often assume that they know what goes on behind the scenes. They see the glamour and beauty, but they are unaware of the hardships that exist behind closed doors. A terrible circumstance included Jim, Camron, and Chrissy. It's time for the truth to be revealed. She started talking about years of unspoken sorrow, betrayal, and rage, a side of the story that had never been fully disclosed. Family problems were no longer the only ones. They also included loyalty, trust, and the disastrous effects that one person's decisions may have on an entire community. Taking a deep breath and getting ready to delve deeper into the web of deceit, manipulation, and treachery that had destroyed Jim's life. Jim and Camron had supported one another through both good and difficult times, much like brothers. But eventually, things changed, and Jim was left in the center as Camron became distant. That's when everything began to go apart. Mommy Jones paused for a moment, her face displaying a mix of sorrow and disbelief. At first, I observed that everything was happening in small, imperceptible cracks here and there. Jim would inform me that he and Camron were no longer in agreement and that things were becoming tough when he got home. Furthermore, Chrissy would constantly bring up the subject as though trying to put pressure on their relationship. Camron and Jim were no longer the only ones involved. It has to do with her power and her idea of what should occur. The weight of her comments hit home as she went on to explain how Chrissy's manipulation gradually affected Jim's relationships with everyone around him. Chrissy wanted Jim to be all she wanted him to be, not realizing that she was ruining him in the process. She didn't want him to become the person he was before. Instead, she wanted him to be the man she had always desired, those who had genuine affection for him. It's the first Camron. This wasn't how he always was. Once upon a time, he was a devoted friend, but devotion has its limits, Mama Jones said, shaking her head. Camron didn't just change when other people did. Instead, he began to see Jim as a way to secure his own spot and advance in the game. Chrissy's arrival was like the arrival of a perfect storm. Jim was being pulled in different directions by each of them. No one ever stopped to ask him what he wanted. She recalled the times, and you could hear the pain in her voice, even though they were all attempting to shape him into their ideal selves. When Jim's life started to spiral out of control, he was an entirely different person. Moreover, it was not the music or the company's fault. Rather, it was because of the people he trusted most. After Chrissy and Camron had progressively stolen everything away from him, he no longer recognized himself. Mama Jones brushed away a tear as she said, "The most agonizing aspect was that Jim didn't even anticipate it, since he was so consumed by his love for Chrissy and the friendship he believed he had with Camron. They were planning behind his back, setting him up for failure while he was blind. Additionally, he was too engrossed in the moment to recognize that it was happening. Even though they had made an appearance, it was now obvious that the betrayal encompassed more than a romantic bond. It was about an old friendship that had become toxic." Mama Jones described how Camron and Jim's relationship deteriorated, how old wounds were reopened and new betrayals surfaced, and how Camron began to emotionally and physically distance himself from Jim. She also described how Chrissy was doing everything she could to set Jim at odds with his true friends. Jim didn't even realize that she was in control of the situation. Mama Jones's voice faltered a little under the weight of the truth. He was the last to know when everything went apart because he was being tested and no one was there to show him what was really happening behind the scenes or to tell him the truth. Having seen everything happen in front of me, I was unable to keep quiet. The damage that Camron and Chrissy had done to Jim, to us, and to everything we had built together, was now more important than Jim alone. Mama Jones' realization that Jim was not the same person she had known before marked a turning point. Not only was he betrayed, but his behavior has also changed. For these games, Jim was too capable, to committed, and to sincere. But loyalty could be your greatest strength. But it could also be your undoing if the wrong people exploit it. I saw my son, the one I raised and loved, become someone I didn't recognize as he lost himself in all the deceit and deception. There was more to it than the pressure of his work and popularity. It was the people he had introduced to his life, people who weren't driven by his hobbies. Mama Jones spoke firmly but intensely. They were skilled at taking advantage of Jim's affection, loyalty, and confidence. In the end, the repercussions fell on Jim. As the days went by, the treachery became too much to bear. And Mama Jones understood that not only Jim, but everyone impacted by the lies and deceit needed to know the truth. I'm not doing this to gain attention or seek revenge. I'm doing this because the public should be aware of Chrissy and Camron's true identities. And Jim needs to know the truth. They believed that they would be able to murder him without consequence. But they undervalued their family. Even though it was far from finished, she made it clear that she would no longer keep quiet for Jim, her family, and herself. Eventually, the truth would come out. It is now too late. We must discuss the turmoil that ensued after Jim Jones's life fell apart as a result of treachery. Now that the intricate web of lies Chrissy and Camron had created has been exposed, it was more than just a public divorce or a celebrity feud. Rather, it was the demise of an empire that Jim had spent years building. But what if the people you trust ultimately lead to your downfall? Jim, ask him. The first step is to be conscious of the implications. According to Mama Jones, the emotional destruction wasn't merely for show. It struck Jim where it hurt him the most. Wayne's musical career had begun, but it wasn't due to changing trends or aging. Rather, it was the harm inflicted by his closest friends and family, whom he believed to be his supporters. According to Mama Jones, Chrissy and Camron were working in the background to make sure Jim would lose his favor, and the result was disastrous. Let's start with the legal ramifications as the full extent of the treachery became apparent. When someone with such a high profile is singled out in this manner, it's not surprising that legal action begins. Mama Jones asserts that Chrissy and Camron threatened to sue Jim, unlike what is generally believed. Personal slights or broken friendships were unrelated to it. Rather, these cases were a part of a larger scheme to deflect his focus while they pursued power, embezzled his funds, and entangled him in legal red tape. But this is when things start to get really interesting. At one time, Jim thought of bringing a big case of his own. Jim still thought that Chrissy and Camron may be saved in some way. Therefore, he was reluctant to launch a lawsuit. He didn't want to assume the worst of the people who had been closest to him. Mama Jones, on the other hand, lacked such luxury due to her protective nature. She was able to see straight through it and uncover the truth about the questionable actions he claims Camron and Chrissy took. The lawsuit would have made the soiled laundry publicly visible. What could have been more satisfying than seeing Camron, the ultimate manipulator, answer questions about his role in the whole thing? This was Jim Jones' biggest mistake. Careers are killed by reluctance. As everyone is aware, by the time he realized what was actually happening, the financial catastrophe had already occurred. But first, let's talk about the money. When someone destroys your relationships and reputation after you've spent your entire life achieving, the financial consequence is unavoidable. Jim Jones lost his financial status as well as his social TIs. According to Mama Jones, Camron and Chrissy's behind-the-scenes manipulation was the cause of Jim's poverty. While Jim was absorbed in the drama, Chrissy and Camron were covertly arranging transactions that depleted his wealth. Imagine being at the top of your game and making millions of dollars, only to discover that your friends have been emotionally draining you. Jim's brand flopped, his commercial ventures failed, and his assets were liquidated. There was more to it than a decline in earnings. The two people he believed to be most dependable were held responsible for the crash. But let's not wait. Mama Jones claims that when Jim discovered Chrissy and Camron had been planning his murder for years, his financial stability was already in danger. The public outcry was the real monster, though, because once the whispers begin, there is no turning back, as we have seen in many scandals. Social media can turn even the smallest murmurs into full-fledged firestorm. And it did catch fire, boy. It was a divided populace. Some supported Chrissy and Camron, while others supported Jim since they thought his career had been completely damaged. During the media frenzy, everyone was accusing one another. Mama Jones acknowledges that Chrissy and Camron were anything but innocent from the public's point of view. They were not only the victims of the story, but they also played a part in this larger-than-life drama, fabricating their own story and giving the media machine false information to make Jim take most of the blame. The speed at which public opinion changed and people began to question Jim's actions is even more shocking. Did he merit the criticism? Was he the victim? Or did he provoke this? Suggested that Jim was being portrayed as a failure who couldn't manage his personal and work obligations. But Mama Jones is determined to stop that. She insists that rather than being the victim of a personal betrayal, Jim was the target of a deliberate attempt to harm his reputation. The last blow occurs when Mama Jones acknowledges that there were other factors contributing to the chaos besides Chrissy and Cameron's egos. Control is involved. You see, they weren't just interested in Jim failing. They wanted to assume his role. They were motivated by a desire to rise above the ashes by destroying what Jim had built. The most disheartening truth of all is that, despite everything we have discovered, the question is still unsolved. What are Jim Jones's potential benefits? Will he be able to rebuild from the debris left by Camron and Chrissy? Or is a reappearance too late? Mama Jones will help him tug the cords. She has, however, stated the facts. In the end, Jim's life was ruined by a well-planned plot by people who claim to love him the most, not by an accident. If you recognize the gravity of this shocking fact and want to stay up to date on every development in this controversy, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. You won't want to miss any of the particular nuances. And because we're just getting started, we'll start right away. Will changing the narrative be enough? Or has the damage already been done? Please share your thoughts in the comments area below if you think Jim's career is doomed or if he will turn things around. Did Jim's life get ruined by Chrissy and Camron? Or did they just play into their hands? There will be additional shocking findings that are exclusive to this location. Turn on your notifications so you don't miss the next surprising discovery. Recall that there is more to that than just rumors. It's about real lives, real betrayals, and real consequences. Tell us what you believe, who you believe is truly responsible, and who you believe is the real mastermind behind this chaos. When it comes to controversy, nobody ever stays mute. Let's have a conversation in the space provided for comments below.